Affinity. He's a longtime PIMA member and a recent past president, and he will be delving into the psyche of the insurance buyer's mind.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, are you ready?
This is going to blow your mind. The start of this is just great. So, it's hard to sell insurance. I know that's something you all already know, and it's a crappy way to start this presentation because it's not going to ignite anything. But do you know why it's hard to sell insurance? Well, I have some thoughts about that I'd like to share with you today. As an industry, we've created some problems for ourselves. Now, there are probably many examples we could cite, but one thing that I think exists is a paradox of choice. Too many companies offering too many products without enough differentiation among them. It's just too hard for the consumer to pick out what they want out of the mix. And then, I don't know if the price is always right, but I do know that it's often hidden. We won't tell people the final price until after they've shared a lot of very personal information with us, sometimes in the form of bodily fluids. And even then, we may choose not to sell to them. Now, in addition to the hurdles we've created for ourselves, there are some cognitive and behavioral biases hardwired into the brains of our customers. Here's a list of about 100 I found that, well, you can read it for yourself, right? So these biases exist because of how the mind works. The mind has two systems of thought. Now, I didn't make this stuff up. Smart guys like these two Ivy League professors did. They've written books on the subject and they're experts on it. I'm going to share with you today just a little slice of what they've discovered. So, system one, thinks fast. It's always on. It's looking for patterns and it will find them. It answers questions, and if it doesn't know the answer to a question, it'll make up a different question that it can answer. Sometimes it makes mistakes, as you might imagine. And then we have system two. System two thinks slowly. It's more analytical and reflective. And it tells stories. And sometimes it stops system one to analyze a problem. And that's good, but system two has capacity limitations. It cannot review everything that system one is doing. And even when it does engage, sometimes it will make mistakes. It will make up a story that explains that mistake so that it's cemented in for good. So system one and system two sometimes working together make mistakes. Probability and risk are two areas where they tend to make mistakes. On the left is a probability tree, and on the right is an illustration of risk aversion that demonstrates as defined under prospect theory. Now, probability trees get pretty complicated pretty quickly, so you can understand why people might make misjudgments about them. And when you introduce human emotions like regret and disappointment, that gets you that asymmetrical curve and the risk aversion. So given that insurance is essentially the pricing of risk based on the probability that something, something bad will happen, and given that people tend to misjudge probability and avoid risk, you would think that would play right into our hands as insurance marketers, and you would be wrong. Because sometimes that risk aversion becomes risk-seeking behavior, like when both choices are losses. So when you have a sure loss versus another loss that's only possible to happen, people will tend to avoid that sure loss and take their chances that the possible loss doesn't happen. Now, what might that look like in real life? Well, you might have a $500 sure loss, that's 100% likely to happen, versus, say, a $54,000 loss that has a less than 1% chance of happening. I would submit to you that most people will not choose door number one and avoid that sure loss in hopes that the possible loss behind door number two doesn't happen to them, that it's their neighbor's house that burns down and not theirs. Now, guess what, Sisyphus? Here we are trying to sell a product that our customers are hardwired not to buy. Then we give them confusing choices and make the buying process difficult. So what can we do? Well, we do have some control over the buying process. We can make the choices more clear. We could offer some better transparency with the pricing and make the buying process simpler. But then there's still that hard wiring problem. What can we do about that? Well, much as we might like to, we can't just go in there and start changing those wires around. But there are tools that can help us understand how that wiring works. Things like functional MRI and implicit association can help us get under our heads, or into our heads, and understand where things are happening in the decision-making process. And by understanding where it happens, we can understand why, and get beyond the claimed response to the real response. So understanding where and why things are happening could help us build better products and design better roadmaps so that people can navigate that buying process and make better decisions about the risks they insure. And if we can get a neuroscientist, a behavioral economist, and an actuary into a lab someday to study this problem, perhaps at a future meeting, PIMA meeting, we can get somebody up here to tell us the results of that study, and that in turn will make us better marketers and better designers of products that our customers will find easier to buy. So I hope I sparked your interest in the last 5 minutes. I hope that we've ignited a spark, and I thank you for your time.